Yeah. I gotta tell you, this is the groove for summer, and maybe summer's coming to the end. Hey everyone, welcome to Barbershop Talks, the August edition here in Define District 9. My name is Daryl Watson. I'm honored to be the council member supporting, or serving I should say, all of Define District 9. I want to thank everyone for being here at House of Hair at 28th and Fairfax. Thank you so much Marcus Pope and family for having us here every other month to make sure that we can have informal discussion with our community, have an informal discussion with leaders within the community, and so we can hear from you after this video as to whether this has had a great impact on your life and what other things you want us to talk to folks about. Today, we're going to be talking about going back to school. We have some leaders that are providing support for our young scholars and are making sure that our communities are being responsive as far as what we're doing for our young people throughout the city and county of Denver. So I'm going to turn it over to DJ Squirrel. Why don't you kick us off tonight? Yeah. I gotta tell you, this is the groove for summer, and maybe summer's coming to the end, but we're feeling it, we're loving it. DJ Squirrel, thank you so much for kicking us off. Hey, why don't we have folks introduce themselves, and we start first with Dr. Dreamer.
Yeah, good evening everybody. My name is Chris Dreamer. I'm the proud principal of the Manual High School. I can't wait to talk about Manual, everything that's happening there. But also important to note, I'm part of District 9 as well. I live in Whittier, so I'm just down the block from here. So both call it home and also work in the school right in the neighborhood. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Happy to have you, sir. We'll just go down the line.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Fernando Branch. I'm excited to be back in District 9. Served here at Manual High School in the past. I'm the proud principal at Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy. So looking forward to the conversation and happy to be part of the community again.
Corey James, principal at Columbine Elementary, going into my 5th year there. I'm a community learner as well as a community leader, so I'm excited that I fit in this conversation just as much as participate. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you, Principal.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm Kurt Abuwai, CEO of MBSB. So, pretty much our focus really on just trying to uplift our community, particularly young, from the age range of 6 to 17 years old, to hopefully become professionals, not just in particular industries, but as human beings. And so it's good to be here. I live in the downtown Denver area myself, close to the course field, and ready to kick this stuff off. So yeah.
Good to see you, Kurt. And Marcus, what do you want to share as before we kick this off? I know you got your baby there in your lap, which is good.
No, it's just always an esteemed pleasure, man, to be able to open up the doors of the shop and just engage in dialogue that we do casually and organically when people are getting haircuts, but we can also do that in formal and informal fashion and just bring some awareness and conversation to the topics that are at the surface of our hearts and minds and the community. And so it's a pleasure, man, to always connect with Councilman Watson and community leaders such as everybody in the room, see how we can better scope and shape a better neighborhood.
Hey, thank you so much, Marcus. I got to say, we have a lot of folks from the community that are also sitting around the barbershop. Thank you all for coming out. If something we're talking about stirs your spirit and you want to share your voice, jump on in at any time. We really want to hear your voices as well. And so to kick off tonight, I just want for our panelists to kind of share a little bit about their journey. What kind of inspired them to go into the field that they're in? What keeps them going? Share a little bit so folks who may not be aware of you and the schools that you lead and the communities that you're leading and learning in, that they get a little deeper sense of who you are. And I'll start once again with Dr. Jareen.
Yeah, my journey into education started like 3rd grade. I remember being like, I'm gonna teach. And my parents were teachers. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not gonna do that. You're gonna go do something else. And I've literally never thought about doing anything else. And so I started teaching right out of school. I was 22 years old, teaching 17, 18-year-olds in Thornton. And then about 11 years ago, got a teaching job at Manual High School. And that's the only school in Denver Public Schools that I know. I've only been at Manual. So that's a good place to be if that's your only spot. But there's something about that place that when you go and walk in Manual, you just don't want to leave. And so I feel very honored to have been both a teacher and an administrator there, and now the principal. And like I said, it's been, I think, 11 or 12 years now in that building. And I've seen so much remarkable students and programs and ideas coming out of that spot. And I've also, quite honestly, seen so much dysfunction, not necessarily from kids, certainly not from kids, but from adults. And so for me, something I was thinking about today was the importance of like stewarding what is Manual and like how precious that is to our community. And that responsibility is something I don't take lightly at all. It's like when I wake up in the morning, it's like, okay, this place is sacred to a lot of people, and so represent that well and steward that well, because there's a lot of people who depend on that place for both currently and historically. So couldn't be more proud and thankful to be a part of that community for so long.
I gotta tell you, Principal Jerome, I live 2 blocks from Manual High School. I've been involved in community, and I have to say you, the administration, have been a blessing. And I'm certain the school has been a blessing to you, but you have been a blessing, and I'm looking forward to engaging more deeply in discussion with you to hear kind of the impact that our community is having on Manual and ways that we can support more. But you said something in introduction I want to dig into a little bit before we go on to the other introduction.
Yeah,
You said your parents said, heck no, don't do this education thing. Share a little bit more as to why.
I think they did that in jest. I think they were educators. My dad worked in the community college system forever. My mom was a special education teacher. And I think it was like, don't do that, but when you do it, you're going to fall in love with it. So it was never an actual, like, go do this, make money. It was always like, just know that when you signed up to be an educator, it's not about the bottom line or the bottom dollar. It's about affecting lives. And so I think it was more of a warning of like, do you know what you're getting yourself into? The seriousness of working with other people's children and the responsibility that is. And then at the same time, they're like, make it happen, like, go do it. So they've always been champions. They're always asking about Manual sports, Manual programs, all of that. So I think it was more of a, hey, this responsibility is something you don't take lightly, and it's not for the faint of heart, I guess.
Well, Principal, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're
Yeah.
participating.
Glad to be here too. Thank you.
I'll turn you over to Principal Branch.
Yeah, originally from Memphis, Tennessee, and I didn't come out of great schools. I'm going to be honest with you. I grew up on the south side of town, and anybody know anything about Memphis, it's a tough city. You got to learn the grit and the grind, and you have to be able to survive, right? I learned at a very early age that for me and so many students who looked like me in a school, in a community, in a city that was predominantly black, that an education or athletics, right, were the only ways that you get out. For me, I was a gifted athlete, and I had pretty good, decent grades, and was fortunate enough to, I went to an HBCU, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, where just like, well, similar to you, Dreamer, I was like, no, I'm not gonna be a teacher. My brother was a physics major, and he said, yo man, you end up going to education, you end up teaching, you're not gonna have any money, you're not gonna have any, stature. Like, why do you want to be a teacher? And I told him, I said, I think I always knew that I had a calling, that wickedness to go into education. But, I listened to my older brother, and I decided not to. Ended up getting a student loan, and 4 years later, still end up graduating with an education degree.
There you go.
Just with a loan. Went into the corporate setting for 3 years and decided that corporate America was not for me. I really love supporting kids and building community. Decided to apply for 3 districts, Chicago, Memphis, Pine Bluff, and I think it was Houston, and Memphis was home. They called me first. And before I knew it, 12 years had went by. I was teaching and coaching track and football and basketball and having a great time. And I think the last year I lost a couple students and decided I wanted to do something different. I needed to change. I needed to broaden my horizon, and that's when I moved to Denver. Ended up teaching 1 year at Montbello High School. That same year, Far Northeast decided to close Montbello. I was the last teacher in, and a lot of people don't know I was the first one out. So I was hired in August, and I was ribbed in December.
I didn't know that.
So the question was, what do I do now? Because I'm a 13-year teacher. I'm in this brand new city. And at that time, Tony Smith, who was the principal of Montbello, said, hey man, I think you should go into school leadership. I applied for Ritchie, got into Ritchie, and spent the next 10 years in some capacity or another working in schools in either far northeast, central, or southeast Denver doing turnaround.
Yeah.
Some of the best work that I can just describe. The work of turning around the school, supporting the staff, supporting the vision of what can be rather than what we think exists, right, or what typically has been.
Yeah.
Has always been my passion, and super excited to do that work in my new assignment as well.
Okay. Well, it's good to see you, Principal Branch, once again, and we met at Manual High School, so it's good to see you in your new role at Robert F. Steen. Principal Jens.
Yeah, I grew up down in Colorado Springs, and in a different experience. I went to really, really great schools. They were all predominantly white schools, predominantly middle upper class schools, and that was kind of all I knew until I got to high school. And there's a really distinct road in Colorado Springs, 115, and there's a high school not too many miles away from my high school. Demographics were completely different. And I was really curious about that as a high schooler. I went over to that school. I facilitated as my own personal project, which I don't really know what I thought I was doing. But I sat down in a classroom with a group of students from Harrison, and I just asked questions about what that felt like to have two high schools within a few miles that were completely opposite in demographics. And so that's where I started, having a critical eye and a critical understanding to the roots of education, the way that the education system was designed. And working with kids was the first thing I felt naturally good at. I was not naturally good at many things, but interacting with kids was the first thing I said, I feel like this is a part of who I am. Lots of educators in my family. My grandfather was a principal by the time he was 30. He had no business being a principal. He had no experience. And somehow they saw him, they said, you've been a teacher for a year, we need a school leader, get in here. But I loved that, and it was part of my story of feeling confident enough to be a young leader. That's why I went into teaching. When I went into leadership, is I went to a school to teach that was really similar to my own elementary school, where I really got to understand the rigid whiteness of education. And I was immersed in it, and I saw it, and I looked around, and that's what made me want to be a leader. When I really kind of learned how education is one of the ultimate forms of social justice. And I wanted to stay in it, I wanted to understand it, and I wanted to be a responsible part of it. So that's what got me into leadership, and I'm really, really honored to serve at Columbine Elementary and a really diverse community, which is also a really rapidly gentrifying community. So I feel a lot of responsibility as a white leader there, bringing the conversation into the white families moving into the neighborhood.
Well, I got to tell you, Principal Jens, we're gonna dive into that because Columbine is once again a few blocks from my house as well, and we do a lot of work in community with parents in Columbine. They think extremely highly of you, and that's why I was so happy to have you on this panel for you to speak from your space, and you can talk to how education differs maybe in different communities, and the vision we have for Columbine, we have for our elementary school kids here in Denver. Thank you so much for being here. And Kurt, share a little bit about your background and kind of what your interactions are with young leaders, young scholars throughout Denver.
From New York City, Brooklyn, and I've always been around young people. Just been a person who's been trying to, make it. My upbringing was poverty. Just talking to my cats over here about it. You know what I'm saying? Just straight up. You knew what you saw, okay? But I was fortunate, through, finally getting my basketball, was able to be a little bit of an example to the younger people, man, and just trying to encourage them on their little walk, And so for me, I was lucky because my best friend, he's from Denver, He started his business. He helped other businesses, like small businesses, develop. And from that standpoint, he inspired me, and I decided that's when I started my little business, MBSB, Mind, Body, Spiritual Business. And my whole thing was just really focusing on the three components, mind, body, and spirit, And you get those things right, then you should get a track business, or at least uplift your brand. And so from that standpoint on, I thought about, again, me trying to become a Division I basketball player, being in Brooklyn, New York. It's not a lot of resources. Just one recreational center, you know, no bus, you know what I mean? I had to go walking. It was miles away, but I had a desire. I wanted to get out of my neighborhood and try to accomplish my little dream. And so from that standpoint on, I started to think about young people and how, you know, I wanted them to go towards their dream and have an easier walk than me. So that's when we decided to partner up with professionals, particularly in the industry of basketball, music, teaching, coaching, and acting, who have some type of experience, right, and success within that. And be able to come in front of these young people, share their personal stories, and we're hoping that it inspires them. And so from that standpoint on, it leads to the training and to the mentoring and influential opportunities. So, you know, our biggest hope is really, you know, through our efforts, and it's mostly an 11-year plan. We start at 6 and we end at 17 or shorter, is for them to be inspired enough and throw up that type of connection, right, with that pro, where they're able to come back into their little communities and do the same thing. So that's that.
Kurt, thank you so much. I mean, I really wanted you to be on this panel because you're engaging with youth in a way that's communicating to them a future that they may not have believed is possible for them. So thank you very much. And I'm going to throw this out to anyone on the panel. When you look at this school year, school is starting for each of your schools, your program is going into schools when they start. What do you see as like the number one opportunity for students, young leaders, young scholars in DPS, Denver Public Schools today? What's the biggest opportunity that you see that your schools are providing, or schools that you've seen are providing for young leaders, youth scholars today? I'm calling somebody. We can't have it. We can't have dead air online.
Yeah, I'll start us off.
And just an opportunity. I mean, and so I don't want to start with what's broken,
Yeah.
but I want to talk to kind of what is the opportunity. So with Columbine, what's the opportunity for those young lives that you're entrusted with, that are coming into that school? What's the opportunity that they're going to see and possibly realize in 2024-2025 school year?
Yeah, so I'll two-part this around the experience and then with the instructional component. But I think first with the experience, what we're working on as a staff, we have a really predominantly white staff. And so a lot of our work is in ensuring that we have the cultural competence to ensure we know how to authentically create places of belonging for every single student. And so that's work we've been working on for the past few years. We've already started this year of what that actually looks like as a teacher in a classroom to be able to create belonging for every single child that's authentic to who they are. They feel seen, their names are pronounced correctly, they see pictures of themselves, they feel connected, that their families have been outreached to, that they feel truly that they belong there, and that their genius will be recognized. So we talk a lot about not looking at any child with any deficit perspective, but knowing that they're excellent, that they're brilliant, they have genius, that they've come to us whole, and that it is our job to maintain that for them. So that's the first thing. I think opportunity is ensuring that that comes first, that feeling of belonging and inclusion comes, and that creates your classroom community and then goes into learning. And so the learning space for us at Columbine, which I hold really dear, is that all of our learning is anchored in authentic audiences, authentic purposes, and connections to their community. So our children don't engage in lessons that are completely disconnected for how that lives in their world. They do a lot of service learning to figure out how they can contribute, how what they're learning today, they can actually go and conceptualize into other people, families coming in, them being experts and presenters, and then tapping into our community to come in as experts in every single way so that we see what wealth in our community actually looks like from different perspectives. So that's an opportunity for our kids at Columbine.
That's actually, can you share a little bit the demographics of your school?
Yeah.
And I'll ask that from each of the principals, just a little background so folks who are watching or going to be viewing can have an understanding of your schools.
Of just what the demographics are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is important because around 7 years ago or so, Columbine was probably 92% black.
Yeah.
And we're currently about 50% white. A little under 30% black, a little under 30% Latinx.
Yeah.
And so it's just a real reflection of what's happened in our neighborhood.
Mhm.
And it plays it's a huge part of the story of Columbine
Yeah.
and the impact on the families who have been there and who have lived in that neighborhood forever. And some families who have been involuntary, moved out of the neighborhood, still send their kids to Columbine because it's where they went, it's where their grandparents went.
Mhm.
So it's a really big part of our story, is the gentrification happening.
Say gentrification, displacement, it's, the economics of it is difficult, but the community piece. I mean, breaking that community bond to spaces and places that they love, like Columbine, like some of the other schools in the neighborhood. So I think that's important. Thank you so much, Principal Janice, for sharing. Anyone else? I'm gonna call on folks if it takes too long to jump in.
I'll jump in. I think the thing I'm most excited about this year with us is that the expectation is for all our students to get associate degrees. You know, you can go anywhere and get a good quality education, but you come to Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy, the expectation is that you have a deep passion and connection to STEAM. You get an associate degree. You have
And sure what STEAM means. For
yeah,
so folks who
science,
don't know.
technology, engineering, mathematics,
Yeah.
and arts, right? Not just to say it, but to actually experience it, and as it relates to career college readiness. We've done an amazing job of hiring. I would say, we were just talking about this, we've all done an amazing job of hiring some of the best professionals that we've ever come across in our entire career. When you create academies that are aligning opportunities like internships, international travel, externships, students who get exposed to these things as early as 9th grade, when you talk about really changing the trajectory and the changing the narrative, especially for marginalized students, which my school demographic was about 85% African American, 5% Hispanic, 2% white, 3% Indian, and it's starting to gentrify now as we see it, and another 4% is probably mixed race. We want to set the expectation that academic excellence and achievement is something that all of our kids can do within DPS, but definitely within our district and within our community for all of our schools. Having that narrative resonate from one leader, from one community to the next is going to be absolutely essential, and that's exactly what we believe is going to happen at Robert S. Smith STEAM Academy.
And where, what's the address of your school?
2900 Richard Allen Court,
Okay, all right.
the Barrett Elementary old building.
Okay. All right, Dreamer.
I know how much time we have about Manual. I'm so thrilled about the opportunities kids have and have had for a while. I think one thing I'd be remiss not to mention is just like breaking the misconceptions about what's happened at Manual, right? Like Manual has an epic history and lore in this city. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what happens in that building. There's certainly that, there are misconceptions. And so the way we've done that over the years is, one, retain a highly qualified staff. We were 95% retained over the last 2 years, and that year over year, same staff doing these amazing things has provided a ton of opportunities. So this upcoming year, we offer 24 credits of college concurrent enrollment coursework on campus. So our kids can, in the school building, take 24 credits of college concurrent enrollment credit. We've got a patient care technician certification, so kids can graduate with a cert. And I know we have a young graduate here, a recent grad, he's gonna be like, where was this when I was in school? We've got a new computer programming certification that's coming this year. We've got a partnership with CU Boulder where we have a full recording studio and rap lab in partnership with their
I saw some of that rap lab
American
stuff.
Studies.
Yeah.
And then of course the full slate of athletics and extracurricular activities. And so the biggest thing for us was to flood that campus because there's a middle school there too.
Yeah.
So we want all of our kids, 6 to 12. We're not a 6-12, but they're all of our kids to have those opportunities. And so it's just so remarkable to see the school during the day, but it's even better after when the campus is just buzzing with kids going to new opportunities. Manual still, and we proudly serve about 96% students of color. That's about 60% Latinx now, and just under 40% Black African American. And which is something to note as we talk about gentrification. It's a really important conversation of there's a stigma and narrative around Manual in a rapidly gentrifying community that's like, there, I'll go there, and I'll go there, but I won't go there. And that's particularly by white parents who, and I think it's important to note my kids go to Columbine, And so I'm seeing both sides of this neighborhood tension.
Yep.
But we're also proud that we have our highest enrollment since 2007. We're at 400 kids this year. And we're capped at 9, 10, 11, and 12. We have a wait list. And so we're happy with who we get to serve every single day. We're not looking to serve anybody else.
I gotta tell you, Dreamer, when I moved there in '97 to Whittier, I mean, parents were, and I think, I don't know if Dr. Branch were back there in '97 or not.
I was there closer to
2007?
2011.
Yeah.
2011.
Yeah, that's
But,
what we meant. Yeah.
but folks were opting out
Yeah.
across the board. I mean, it was not even a choice. For most of the white parents that were moving into the neighborhood, when I moved to Whittier, it was 50% African American, 50% white, 50% Latino, based on the last demographic census count. That was not what we're seeing now, because I am riding my bike everywhere I go. I run throughout the neighborhood practically every morning. People who live in Whittier are walking to your school.
Yeah.
And that is new. And so without even you telling me the numbers, I know it's real, and I think the middle school at Emmanuel is also, what has been that feeder from the middle school to Emmanuel?
Yeah, I mean, it's grown over the last few years. I mean, it's also important to know, like, when McAuliffe at Manual was first put into Manual, it wasn't a goal necessarily that was a direct feeder. It was just that McAuliffe was expanding and they were looking for space, and we had real estate available, right?
Yep.
At that time, we had 212 kids, 215 kids. And over the last 8, 9 years since they've been in the school, we've just had to build a really strong partnership. So I think the first year, actually 2 years ago, my apologies, their graduating class was the first class that started at the middle school. And only 6 kids that 2 years ago graduated, started at the middle school, and then graduated to high school. This year, our freshman class has 65
Wow.
8th graders who are now 9th graders.
Wow.
And so we just built that pipeline, and it's the principal at Manual Middle School, because it is now Manual Middle School,
Yes.
which we're thrilled about.
That's good.
Was the
I'll
AP
check
at
it out.
Manual for the last 12 years.
Yeah.
So Doug and I work very well together to make sure that, again, like I said, that all of our kids, and that there's a pipeline between the middle school and the high school. So.
And I was gonna ask Marcus, because I mean, you've got some little ones that we've gotten to know really well through these barbershop talks and me coming here and getting my hair cut as well. Can you share from a parent's perspective, and anyone else, share from a parent's perspective, a community member perspective, what are the opportunities you're hoping for that your young people will see and experience this next school year? What are the hopes you have for them within DPS, within schools across the city and county of Denver?
I just think more reflection of what is being expressed here tonight. And by that, I mean more just visibly seeing the intentionality of our leaders. They make it a point to not just function in their vocation in a particular community, but to school their own children in the community, to connect after hours with their community. Because Branch now is clicking to me. Now I know where I know you from. And it's from your other community engagement, from a foundation I sit on, a board I sit on. And so seeing it past 3 o'clock is essential. Seeing our leaders be able to engage in the barbershop, in the corner bodega. That's what I like to see. My daughter was here in the barbershop with me today. One of her former teachers came in, and her son gets her hair cut by Samantha. That's community, and community shouldn't stop when the bell rings. It shouldn't wait until 7 o'clock, 7:45 when the bell rings. But that constant continuation of connectivity and intentionality, man, to build that. And that's what I think I value as a parent, to see my kids, to be able to see Daryl Juneteenth or Councilman Watson out and about. You know what I mean? And they're running to so-and-so at the airport.
Yeah.
That's essential for them, and it holds a sense of accountability, connectivity, and that they're part of something beyond just these school hours, or beyond this small framework of time permits. So that's what I value as a parent.
Thanks, Marcus. And I was going to ask you, Sam, as well, because you're quiet. So I know when you're quiet, you got something brewing there. So talk to me a little bit, what you're thinking about, hearing the voices of principals, hearing Kurt's voice for work that he's doing within schools. What are your thoughts as far as, I'm going to start first with the opportunities from the young people that you interact with on a regular basis. What you are looking forward for them to have in 2024, 2025 in Denver Public Schools?
That's a good question. I've been quiet because after every barbershop talk or during, I always speak, and I just figured on this one I would
I'm on your voice.
well, you know I'm gonna say something, but I thought it would be really nice to sit in and just receive what is being expressed.
Yeah.
Because I do not have children personally, but that does not mean that I am childless.
Yes.
For a lot of you who don't know, I do serve at my church. I am over the children's ministry there, and this was my first year actually getting something kind of brewing throughout the summer, like through all of July, as well as ending it with the Armor of God Bible Boot Camp. So that's probably another reason why I'm real quiet. I'm just really trying to take it in. And in all honesty, I think everyone that has mentioned what they bring to the table regarding community, I think it's refreshing to hear. I didn't get to hear everybody because I was working, but like Marcus mentioned, after hours, outside of the norm, I think even for me personally, not today, but this summer, it's been very eye-opening for how even the children at my church engage. Like I literally went up the street to a black-owned business that had, it's a plant shop, unique arrangements, and we did sewing Saturdays. So we did repotting of plants, right? And then we had music Mondays at my church. But what really opened my eyes is the engagement outside of our Sunday, right? So just like Marcus said, like after hours, out of your norm, they get to retain a lot of that information or those activities and those opportunities. And I think it even brought a lot of even my single moms and our parents even closer through my church. So saying that to say, I didn't want to go just strictly faith-based, but I agree with what he said regarding the different opportunities, you know, at Manual. And I didn't get to hear everything that you said, but I heard mind, body, spirit, you know, and for you to be like Colorado Springs, look, I was used to one demographic, but high school changed it for me. And for you, I heard bits and pieces about where you were and how you were transferred. I think you said Houston, maybe, did you say Houston?
Yeah.
Michigan, maybe?
No.
Okay, Houston, sorry, forgive me.
That's all
But
right.
I'm hearing everybody's take, and I think the opportunities that you guys present by actually being vessels is, I think, iconic, and that will shift the momentum in itself. Because like Marcus said, I wouldn't want somebody to teach my child or to be at an after-school program or to be at a barbershop. I've seen barbers come to the shop and they just strictly cut hair for money, when in actuality, this is the meeting place. We can have talks, we can have kids that, like I mentioned before, the candy machine in here, my clients, 11-year-olds, are like, hey, I would love to start a business. Can I place this in your shop? Or, you know, just typical, whether if it's former lawyers and judges and councilmen, like it's such a meeting ground. And I'm saying that to say, a lot of people do things just for the love. You talked about the lack of money in education. I hear that quite a bit, but for someone to be in education, that means that, and they actually love it. His daughter's former teacher, she and I were just talking this morning, and she was like, I will not leave Stedman. I will not. Even when my kids graduate, they leave, I won't leave it as community. And I literally went into a deep conversation about that. So just saying that to say, not just being in position because you're in the position, but being the vessel, right, and being used. So I think the opportunities come through us by actually taking that calling, by taking that charge. Like, hey, you know, we got work to do in these communities in different ways. So hopefully that makes sense, but I just really was soaking in everything that everybody has said today. And I just thank God for House of Hair being able to actually have you guys in here, because it's also encouraging me. It's also opening my view and my, you know, perspective. I live in Aurora and I work here, but to hear about all of the different schools and regions, or not regions, but districts, you know? So it's really educating me as well.
Well, I gotta tell you, Sam,
so
what you bring, and what Marcus and the folks here bring at the House of Hair, you bring a space for youth to thrive.
Absolutely.
And that's why I was asking you.
No, I hear
and
it.
I appreciate your thoughts always.
I appreciate that.
And Kurt, I was gonna ask you a little bit too on, as you are sitting here with leaders from different campuses across Denver, and part of your work is connecting with schools in order to touch young scholars. What would you like to see as far as that organic or even strategic outreach to nonprofits like yours, so that you can be a part, a for-profit like yours, and even some nonprofits, so I'll put it that some nonprofits will be listening. What would you like to see that can maybe build that bridge so it's easier for y'all to engage with schools, to engage with young leaders in schools, to make even more of a difference, to add to the difference that these leaders and their schools are currently having?
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I mean, we've been lucky. I was educated. I worked at Barbershop Academy last year, and that was the time when my business really was starting to just get an operation. And so we had a cohort of 13 boys and girls. Okay, so we was there to provide professionals from sports all the way to financial literacy. And so from that standpoint on, I decided to reach out to the director of AEA, Achieving Excellence Academy. And so what they do is they do a summer program where they help young people build their self-efficacy and self-worth, and actually be able to come around to the 5 Points area and really understand their history. And that young man over there, who just recently graduated from Manual High School, was our number one photographer.
All right.
All right.
Yeah,
That's good.
Yes, sir. And so, I don't want to speak too long, take anybody's time, but it's really collaboration, okay? And so when I spoke to Ms. Giles, the thing about it was, hey, you need to change your business model. I was so wide open to do that. And she was the first person to tell me that. Because these kids been sitting in class, whatever, 8 months, and they're bored. You need to change it up and, bring something to the table to keep these young people engaged and really inspired. I said, thank you, I appreciate that. So we went back to the drawing board, we changed it up, and so again, we was here to bring in some different professionals around the metro area, right? A pro boxing coach, from that standpoint, nutritional coach, okay? And was able to bring in actually a pro DJ to really teach these young people self-disciplinary techniques in order to be successful, not in those professions, but in life, okay? And that led to impact. That's impact. And that led to a great review. That led to being referred another year in Denver Public School on a contract. So what I'm saying to you, Mr. Watson, is that it needs to be a two-way street.
Yeah.
You can't just, stay in that little bubble and bust it around. We got to be we got to outreach. We got to step out. Just like how I got to get in contact with Mr. Shelby. I went to Montbello and I went to their fair, and I was able to throw out the pitch, and they led me to you. And hopefully that leads to more opportunities. And for our young people to be sitting over here and be able to really suck in all the greatest from you guys, that's what's inspiring. Because just before we roll here today, they're talking about their futures. They're about to step into their jobs. We got a business owner over here, and they really need inspiration. And it's not just me because they know me, it's everybody. And everybody really locking arms to really help them to see the way to the next level. And that's that.
All right. Thank you, brother. Thank you for sharing. And he called you out for a second, so I'm going to put you on camera for a second if you don't mind. Come on over. Introduce yourself a little bit, and then.
Should I just stand right here?
Yeah, you can stand
All
right.
right.
Yeah, you on it.
My name is Bay Gonzalez, or Bay Janan Aziz Gonzalez. It's my full name. I originate from Cabo Verde. It's like a West African island. I'm 18. I'm a manual graduate.
There you go. T-Bolts.
Yeah, hell yeah. I'm also a photographer and an artist. So basically, right now, my biggest goal is to really just I work with I would like to say I'm more of a youth photographer, youth-led photographer, and I also am a youth facilitator for a nonprofit organization called Words Beyond Walls over at Cole. So
At Cole Middle School, or Cole High School?
High school and middle school.
Yeah.
And so I try to work with people, like-minded people like Kurt, who want to help the youth understand what it means to be in tune with yourself so that we can lead them in the right direction. Whether that be like sports, anything, it really doesn't matter. But through what I do in my photography, I just want to inspire people to be okay with being yourself and being okay with showing people that you're shifting and changing, because that's what we're all doing. And whether we like it or not, we all go through this every day together. So it's like I don't know. That's kind of my.
Well, I got another question for you. Recent graduate from Manual.
Yeah.
What did you take from Manual? What was your experience at Manual that you think has provided you the rooting and the ability to move to your next journey after school and whatever else from your business and all that stuff? Share, because some of the young people they're starting up their school year now and they're yearning for whatever grade they're going to. Talk a little bit about what you got from Manual that helped prepare you for this next step.
Definitely a lot. I would say that Manual provided me basically most of the opportunities that kind of it provided me a lot of stepping stools for like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now. Manual was a great way to get me in collaboration with National Geographic. They're really great at getting the kids out there and just they're really great at getting kids in different environments, and not only like just Manual, but together with other schools. So what I will say, Manual has it's such a family environment that even when they do stuff like that, it feels like such a family trip. Everything that they do, anything that any program or event that they have, it always feels like a family event. And that's one thing that I definitely took with me. And like I said, they provided me many opportunities with my photography, offered me many jobs. I can go on.
Oh, no, brother, that's good.
Yeah,
I'm going to applaud you. Go T-Bolts, we're proud of you. We're proud of you, and thanks for coming in and hanging with us tonight. So we're doing commercials for Manual High School tonight.
I appreciate it.
But I got to say, I appreciate the young man and what he shared, and I'm curious from all of your perspectives. What is the 1, 2, 3 things if you had, let's say the magic wand, because I can't think of anything else, but if you had something that you could flick and say, this is what our community needs, this is what our young people need, this is what our administrators and educators need. If you were able to make that happen next week, what would that one thing, I'm going to give you just one, because I know y'all can come up with more than one. What would be that thing that you would want and need for your community, for your young scholars, for your educators, administrators? What would be the one thing that you would choose? Don't tell me I stumped you.
Yeah, this might be wandering, but I feel like it pulls on some threads from this conversation. And I know this will sound like very not administrative, but sometimes I feel like we implement policy and we prioritize policy and not people. And that's something like use policy to avoid looking at reality and like what's happening. It's like, well, we'll get to that. We haven't gotten to that policy. So like currently we live in a city where a lot of kids are winning and a lot of kids are losing.
Yes.
And we should not have, we don't need some to win and others to lose. I think we need to really think about it. I know this is very, very philosophical, but we need to look ourselves in the mirror and say like, my school can be rated yellow or green or blue, and I can still have major gaps with students who I can just kind of push to the side as long as I elevate these scores. And so like one thing, I know this has been a lot about Manual, but one thing about Manual is like, we don't hide from our data. We have no one we can hide and say, well, we have some kids succeeding, so our data is what it is.
Yeah.
That's our family data, that's our test data, and I love that because it tells us exactly where we are. I can't run a smoke screen and say, well, no, we're good, because we get to serve all the kids that in many ways and many times, like other schools are like, no, I'm not them. And all of a sudden we're like, no, this is who gets to serve, who we love. And so I think this idea of what I would love to change is this idea of like, and I'll make one other little comment here on this, is we talk a lot about education as what kids get when they cross the stage. And we forget that like they get to engage with one another in a classroom every single day.
That's right.
It's the one place in this community, Park Hill, Whittier, Cole, Clayton, all of our neighborhoods where kids from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic classes get to sit at desks together and figure out this world together. And I think that's my biggest hope, is that we have schools that honestly talk about issues happening in our community, and kids get to sit and talk about them together from their perspective and make meaning with one another. And that they get to succeed, and they get opportunities, and they have a meaningful diploma. That's something like I want for my own kids at Columbine, and Corey spoke to it, was why we love Core and we love Columbine is they authentically put kids from all different parts of the neighborhood and backgrounds together and say, let's figure this out together. And I think that there's something very special. Not a lot of schools do that. They prioritize policy over people, and when we do that, we can run a smoke screen for what's really happening.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of an indirect answer, sorry.
It's your answer, man.
That's
It's your
where I'm
answer.
at.
It's where your heart's at. So I'm with you. You said red, yellow, green. Is that a flag? Is that what?
So the
exactly?
state has these colors of school ratings, which just an interesting way to measure schools. So blue is the best, green, yellow, orange, red, and I think honestly, when you give a school a color, you're also saying something about the community that loves that school.
That's right.
We're a red school. Does that mean we're a red community? We're a failing school. Does that mean we're a failing community? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So, I have my own opinions
Yeah.
about
And we
ratings
share,
colors. Yeah.
we share the same opinion, and that's why I'm not gonna ask any of y'all questions about where your schools are rated, because I could care less. I grew up in the Virgin Islands, very small island. We had the poor school on the east side in the country where I grew up, where for the immigrant kids and for the kids from the rich families went to the other school. And to tell you the clarity as to what we were valued as, they referred to the school where the rich kids had to go to as high school. The whole island called it high school, and where we went was called by the name of the school that we're in. So we would be competing against each other and say, a high school scored, and Ivana Yudorican, lost 13-0. We are literally sitting two high schools, and they call one a high school, the other one by its name. And so I understand the scoring for the way DPS does stuff, but our communities are not rated by color. And I love that you said that. Yeah. What other thoughts of folks?
I just wanted to say that I totally agree, especially about, as far as when we talk about like implying policy, I think, for me, I think from a standpoint of like just another student, already, what I talked about a lot last year in student voice leadership was the fact that a lot of students, they kind of feel like they're boxed in a lot, and they feel like they have nowhere else to go. And so already when we get up and go to school, it kind of feels like we're already making a choice to do something that we would rather not, just because, especially in today's society, the youth lifestyle is starting to get a lot more hectic, and things are starting to, we're just growing up a lot faster, so we're starting to develop a sense of like life in high school, which sometimes like definitely gets in the way, and it feels like a lot of times for certain students, and I see it and I understand why a lot of students can't do it, because it kind of feels like school is overlapping with them. And a solution that I probably would have for that is just to kind of, I go back and say with Coach Kurt's point, just like collaboration. If they are going to be at school, make them really feel like they're together, and make them really feel like they are coming here to be, in unison with another. And that's really all I value.
Because school isn't just simply interruption of your life. It is your life. It is part of your life, and it's part of who you are going to be and continue being as you get older. And so ensuring that your school, your grounds are a place where kids feel like, well, I'm not just interrupting my life until 4 or 5 o'clock and then I go back to life. That is a continuation. So I appreciate your brother.
Yeah, he said something I think that's profound, that it made me think that two things that if I could wish it, right?
Yep.
I would want to wish how we navigate and we deal with trauma.
All right.
Right? And then I think the other piece is our finances.
Wow.
When you think of our communities, holistically, it doesn't matter in this city right now, holistically, I can't even afford to live in this neighborhood, right? In this very neighborhood that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And I thought about what you just said about the fact that it just seems like you guys are growing up a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
And I put those two words together, financial trauma.
Yeah.
And you apply that from a generational standpoint. Some of us never escape it. We live in it, we recycle this process in it, and then it just regurgitates itself. My wish would be we have to do a better job of educating from a 360 lens, not just the student, but the family.
That's right.
Yeah.
If we educate the family, we start to educate the community. If we all can do that and figure out how to work within the nonprofit space or the for-profit space to collaboratively get on the exact same page to address this one issue, right? I think it will solve so many of the issues and the challenge. I'm not even gonna call them issues. I'm gonna call them challenges because we continue to try to solve problems with the exact same thought process and methodology of what we've always done. Nobody was willing to say, we gotta do something different to change the outcomes, not just for our kids, but for our families.
And we have to heavily take into the fact that like these kids are like evolving on a level that's not even fathomable right now. Like some of these kids are actually like smarter than me. And I think I'm super smart, but I see the level that.
All right, man, no hold back.
That's it.
You know, I'm just saying, I'm thinking about like where these kids can be if we let them be a little bit. Like, you know, I just see how bright they are, and like it's crazy, especially as a person who just graduated, and I'm still working with these kids, and I'm still seeing these kids, and they have the most, they have everything. They have all the potential, they have everything. And I really don't want to see that go to waste.
Yeah.
Because school is, you know, stressful.
I hear you. Principal?
Yeah, I could sit and listen for a while. I guess all my 2 words are starting big and I'll get detailed, but for my whole school community, so I'm thinking about students, I'm thinking about staff, I'm thinking about the community. And this relates back to what Chris was saying of just of liberation to be powerful. And so we're an innovation school. We wrote our innovation plan to allow us to maintain some fidelity to the way which we believe is best for kids and insulate ourselves a little bit from the continuous change of trial and error that happens sometimes in our district. And we're part of the Black Student Success cohort. The Black Student Success team was just developed in DPS last year, led by Michael Atkins, former principal at Stedman.
Okay.
And he's the director of Black Student Success. And they're launching this with just a small group of elementary schools, 5 schools. And we're engaged in action research all about Black student success. And part of that understanding is being willing to look at systems for how they were designed and who they were designed for, and being willing to change it. And I mean that for kids just as much as I mean that for adults. And so my wish for Columbine students would be to engage in places that allow them to see themselves as powerful and allow them to see their families as powerful. How impactful is it when I see my family being invited to the table to make the policy decisions about how my school runs? And so I think about that a lot of who feels places of power and who feels places of disempowerment. And that goes all the way up from students to staff to community members. So that would be my big wish, is that we find places to be liberated from policies that are constraining us and maintaining the same results and the same data that we're getting over and over. And that taking that and allowing people to actually be critical and ask the questions for how things came to be the way they are now, and then empowering people to do it differently, to try something different. And we're engaged in action research along with these other schools in this cohort. And for me, that feels even liberating, to get permission from the district to say, go and learn about this and go and figure it out.
Wow. I love that, and I want to build on that a little bit. In what ways are you all empowering young leaders in your school and community to go to that level? What are the specific things you're doing, and if you haven't, executed on it yet, what are you going to do this year to get your young leaders, your young scholars, to the space that you just described, as far as number one, being empowered, understanding and making sure that they are in charge, them and their families are in charge of their futures. All of the work that you're doing at Manual, all the work that you're doing at Barbershop Smith. So what's something that you...
Yeah, I mean, Bay spoke to it just a second ago. Manual has, it's called Student Voice and Leadership, which is a district-wide program. And as Manual tends to do, we just took it another level, and because of Bay's leadership and student leadership. So this leadership class essentially and in DPS generally, looks at school policy and
Yeah.
says, how do we shift this from a student level to a student level, and from a student perspective. And so, over the last 5 years at Manual, that's included a student curriculum review board. So teachers have to go in front of students and be like, here's what we're teaching, what can we do to make this more responsive to the interests and experiences of kids. And then last year that meant that students created policies and took them all the way to the largest educational research conference in the country and spoke to educational researchers from universities across the country and was like, this is how you change the paradigm from adult-led to student-driven. And had 2 sessions that were some of the most popular sessions at the conference. And so, again, I think you can pay lip service and be like, oh, we have this group that does this thing, and then like check that box. Or like really say like, okay, our hands are off this, and students are going to drive it. And when you do that, it becomes, and we have so far to go. I'm not going to say that. Our whole policy structure is student driven. We can do, and family driven. I think more importantly. But I think that's one thing I'm really proud of, and that has very little to do with me, and very much more to do about Bay and the student leaders at Manual saying like, this is how we're going to change this program and take this further.
And I can attest that Manual is getting way better at just putting us in the environments. Like, I will say my senior year, I did feel a lot more free, and they put me in even more environments, like I said, with the National Geographic. Us as students, we weren't at school, we were actually out in the mountains learning how to use camera gear, but they let us, they let us be. Serena Montoya, she's one of the deans, social worker at the school. She did a great job of just, first of all, organizing that whole trip, and then on top of that, executing and letting student voice leadership be student voice leadership elsewhere, not just at Manual. That's what I mean when I say like unity. Like they did do a great job of that.
And that's a continuation of what we've been talking about, is breaking down the walls of school. School isn't just a building. School is people. It's a community within those walls. And so if you're in the mountains, you're still in school. And making sure that you're empowered to lead in that way, I think is powerful. What are the thoughts from leaders, and that's for anyone on the panel?
I think I'm in agreement with everything Chris said. One unique thing that we did this year, we brought on NAF Academies.
And what is that?
So a NAF Academy basically is a collaboration between corporations, nonprofits, parents, students, and staff. And you have to have these advisory boards. We recognize that industry told us the last 3, 4, 5 years is that students are graduating from college and they don't have the soft skills development to go into industry. So how do you fix that? You bring the industry to you, right? I'm excited about the fact that this year we're going to have corporate partners, Lockheed Martin, Blue Origin, people who are in the STEAM field working with our students in school. When you bridge that connection, they're more inclined to say, hey, at the end of the year, let's get these internships with these students that we've been working with all year. And having students engage in that, similar to how you said National Geographic, that's what it is. It's not rocket science, right? Manual been doing this for a long time. I think collectively we have to do this holistically with everybody. Every school in DPS should have advisory boards that 30% should be made up with corporate members and the rest should be constituents in the community to bridge those partnerships, because they've been asking for it. We just haven't been listening. So we're doing that this year, and I think it's gonna serve us well.
It will.
That's awesome, Principal Branch. Let me know how my office can also be a part of that as well, because I think that is an amazing opportunity to ensure that that the school is reaching out, but we also in community are reaching in, we're leading in, and I think that creates that type of community and environment where we're all working to the same end. So, come back to you, Principal.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. We, as part of our Black Excellence Plan, we engaged a group of our Black families to help us write it for our school. So Black Excellence Plans are part of the Black Excellence Resolution passed by the Board of Education, tasking all schools with having a specific plan for how you're elevating and ensuring Black excellence of all students. And so we had a group of families come in and write that, and write specifically what will be true for our students, our families, our staff and our leaders at this school. And so that group, which is just a phenomenal group of families that are so engaged and so invested in every kid at Columbine, they collected a group of 5th grade Black students. And we had the idea that they could write a student-facing Black excellence plan. And so they engaged in a process of thinking about their lived experiences, a lot of them from ECE, all the way up through 5th grade at Columbine. And they've been such, privy observers to the gentrification, right? Their classes have looked so different from when they came in ECE to when they're leaving as 5th graders. And so they had a chance to write what expectations, what policies, what experiences do we need to pay attention to ensure Black students who are coming into us as babies have that experience that we would want for them. And so they wrote that, and then they put it together in terms of what is really important to them and what really impacts their experience. And then we put that into our school family compact that goes out to every single family. They sign it, the student signs it, and the teachers sign it to say these are what our commitments and our agreements are too. So that was one aspect, and I have to give so much props to our Black Excellence crew of families who then brought that to our 5th graders and led that work with them.
I've never heard of that before. I mean, I heard of the idea of how do we engage and make sure that we have Black students, Black families excelling in all of our schools, but I was not aware of that compact. And so I think that is amazing, and it was the Black parents that actually took leadership of that, and the young scholars that actually delivered. So I think that's an amazing opportunity for folks to take charge of their future. So
they ended the year designing a mural outside that's outside now. It says "We are kings and queens," and they painted it at the end of the school year as their like 5th grade Black Excellence crew kind of imprint that we plan to kind of build on each year.
All right. I'm going to throw it out to everyone. Then we're going to go around the room one last time with the panel, and we're going to have you kind of share why families should choose your school. So we're going to have you do a little bit of an advertising for your school at the end. But anyone else that's here in the audience, if there is one thing that DPS could do for students this year, what would be that one thing? We're going to do speed round. That means this is like speed dating. You're going to go quickly. What is the one thing you would like to see from DPS as far as pertaining young people in the city and county of Denver? Brother, I'll start with you, and I'm just going to go around the room. Anyone that wants to yell it out.
Translation. Like, one thing Coach Kirk does a great job of is just making what he's teaching or his curriculum translatable to real life. Like he taught a financial literacy class, which now I understand how to put my business forth so that I can get back to the youth. And then I want to say one thing, as an adult, like getting right out of high school, as an adult, I feel a quick way to give myself value is simply giving back to the youth. So just staying involved.
And no one, and I appreciate that, because when you are engaging, like with Coach Kirk and others, as a young leader, you need to make sure what they're providing to you that you can actually use. And you can, so financial literacy, as you stated, you're running your own business now based on the work that he did. So making sure that our schools are applying not just good lessons and providing education, but providing it in a way that the students can take it to and through whatever their next steps are in life. So thank you so much. And I'm not going to put anyone in the spot. I'm going to keep going around the room. If anyone else has something to say, just jump on in, and we're going to keep turning.
I'm gonna add on today. I think DPS needs to include reality. I think like as you grow older, they lose the concept of reality. Like how we start in kindergarten, they teach us treat others how you want to be treated. Like just like humanity basically. But like after like 5th grade and you get to 6th grade, it's like do this. It's like policing. Like instead of us teaching us how to get through life, y'all are telling us one straight path. You're not giving us another option. Y'all not telling us y'all can always have something else except for what you're looking at. It's not always just a straight path. Like it's time to expand. You always have room to grow. I think just including reality, even outside of life, like when they see us around, like knowing like we're East Siders, even when it's not East Side, it's like in Aurora. Like, this is life that we live through on a daily concept. Like, we just don't come to school here. We live in the community. We live in the neighborhood. We know each other's families. We know each other from outside of here. Instead of policing, I think just indulging the reality of life instead of just one narrow road.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, when our young people walk into the buildings that we call our schools, they're bringing all of it with them. They're bringing what happened last night, what happened last week, what's going on with their families. And so education can't be divorced from reality. I mean, you have to be able to, within the walls of our schools, understand where our young scholars are coming from. And so I appreciate your voice. And it's going to be heard because we're going to broadcast this, so folks are going to be hearing this. But I appreciate your voice. Any other thoughts? And we're going to keep coming around this direction.
I went to a school where it's like, let's say you had a bad day, right, before you went, and as soon as you go to school, they're like, no, it's like they didn't care about what happened to you, your experience. And then I went to a school where that's the first thing they focus on. And I feel like we need more schools like that, because I feel like them schools, with them people, they know exactly what you feel because they go through it too. You know, they know you're human and they're human. But there's a lot of schools where, like she said, they forget that reality part. Like, you go through stuff that is way worse in school. Yeah.
I mean, young people aren't separated from trauma that's going on in the world. You're not separated from the stuff that's happening with your family. You're not separated from money issues also. And so making sure that that our schools are aware of you as a whole person and not just, you know, a 1 or a 0 on how many students are in the school, but really you're a person. So I appreciate you sharing your voice. Darius, I'm going to come to you. And before I come to you, who provided us food tonight? For
Blazing Chicken Shack. Yeah, at 33rd and Holly, right?
There you go. There you go. You got to support black business and support Blazing Chicken Shack every night, every time for Barbershop Talks. But Darius, share a little bit on your thoughts as to what schools should bring. And you got one young one, you have another one on the way. Share a little bit as to your thoughts and your hopes.
I guess just the one thing, like even when I toured STEAM, Robert F. Smith STEAM Academy, that I really liked is high expectations of the students. And I know we talked about kind of some of the things that are going on with students outside of their life. So I think a good way to like combine the reality of what students are going through, but also still holding them to a high expectation, because that's kind of how the real world is going to work. Your boss may care about what happened to you last night, but in a few days, in a couple of weeks, you still gotta do your job, and you're gonna have to do your job at the highest level that you can do. So I think just having high expectation for our students, specifically students of color as well, because one thing I know that Principal Jenks said is she notices the genius in kids early on, and I think that that is very important to not categorize kids into boxes as like bad kids, or that's the smart kids, or those are the good kids, because a lot of times kids will live up to your expectations. Right. So when you expect a kid to be a bad kid, they'll do it, you know, but when you expect a kid that to be a genius, they'll also do that as well. So I think just having those high standards and high expectations out of the students.
Now y'all see why I hired him, huh? While he's running my office. Thank you so much, Darius. Mr. Pope, anything you want to share?
I just think, just you know, youth are a reflection of where and what they come from, and so I think just ongoing intentionality and consideration on how we can serve that. Dr. Branch hit it on the head. I think that in the broader scope, we have to consider the family dynamics. Yep. And they bring that to school. We brought it to school. And so a furtherance for those who have started it, a continuation for those who have started it, and the challenge and the charge to those districts, those schools who have yet to take that risk to really engage that family and consider how the family's needs can be served. We serve the family's needs, we serve the child's needs. That's how we can.
All right, thank you. Sam, anything else to add?
Yes.
I'm gonna say what I always say, and it's hope and faith. And I feel like with all the resources, with all of the, educators, with all of the council members, with all of our barbershops, all of the people that make up community, I think faith is very important and hope is very important. For this young man to use the two schools as a spectrum of, hey, I can walk in and I am disregarded, and on the other hand, that's the first thing that is tended to. I think about how she mentioned, look, reality. When you walk in and you feel like a robot versus, like you talked about policy, and all I heard was robot when she walked in. Like, look, we're being policed, right?
Yeah.
So just saying that to say, I think, faith comes by hearing, and a lot of times sitting in these rooms and in these settings, we're hearing the resources. We're hearing, okay, he might be dealing with something at home. We have a resource for that. We'll call Coach Kirk up, right? And then it's like, okay, we're gonna send him the manual with the after-school program. Like, the faith, the hearing, and the community building, it all ties together, if you ask me, because a lot of these kids are becoming more and more suicidal. They're becoming more and more hopeless.
Yeah.
And like she said, it's not a straight and narrow path, right? It's not always college right off the bat.
That's
I
right.
might go another field, another route,
Yeah.
but that also brings hope. That brings purpose.
Yeah.
That brings a life. So I'm always going to preach faith and hope. I am faith-based, if anybody doesn't know. But you don't have to walk around and preach Christ to say, hey, I am presenting hope.
That's
I am
right.
the living embodiment of Christ, and to share that with our youth. So,
That's right.
yeah.
All right, thank you, Sam. Kurt? And just from you and from your perspective, as far as what are the things that you will be doing or that you anticipate that you can do in the position that you're in to empower youth scholars and leaders in 2024, 2025 to really meet?
No way to do it. I'm making 10 calls a day, trying to get back within the school district, nonprofit organizations, recreational centers, foster homes, group homes, churches, treatment facilities, give us a chance. Number one, we have experience at what we do, we just want to get in there and just really help these young people become the better they could be. And that's just what it is.
Yeah. How can folk connect with you, Kurt?
Thank you. The website,
What is it?
www.mbsbnow.com.
And say that again?
Yeah.
www.mbsbnow.com.
Okay.
MBSB.
Yes.
Yes, .com.
And I want to just say some more good. I got big shout out to him, because I will say, when we talk about connecting with the children, he's done this and showed longevity within that. I've known him since I was in 5th grade, and he kept the connect. He left. He wasn't even at the school when he coached at the school, left, came back, and never lost the connection, and still makes the choice to reach out every time. So that's
Your school, why? Because that's a trust for each of your schools, and we'll close out with that why from each of you. And then call y'all in order so y'all can start however you want. I'll start with you, Branch.
I would say, at Robert F. Smith, we see that you are your ancestors' wildest dreams. If you come to this place, you will not only reach those dreams, but you will reach them with care and joy.
All right, brother.
I'll go. Yeah. I think families across any background with kids would benefit from coming to Columbine, because Columbine is this small microcosm of our society right now, really authentically. And that is at the forefront of all of our conversations. We don't hide it, we don't shy away from it, we don't disengage in conversations about our reality. We put it at the surface so that all of our decisions are made with that in mind. I think, back to what I said about that sense of belonging, it's at the forefront. I'm just thinking so much about that comment of feeling seen when you walked in, and how different you show up as a child when you feel seen by an adult or by a classmate or by a leader versus when you don't feel seen, and the difference that your brain is activated in when you're in learning. And then the other thing I want to bring up is just that high expectations.
Yeah.
And I'm going to quote Ken Williams, who wrote Ruthless Equity, and he talks about hold the crown.
Yeah.
Hold the crown, and every single child will rise to it, and some will go through it. But that's our job. And so I think the benefit of coming to Columbine is that you as a parent and your child will be engaged in such a pertinent real world experience of being a community and being a diverse community, and everyone excelling within that.
Give you some snaps. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Watch out back.
Come on now, Chris.
No, I do. I remind our staff a lot that in the city of Denver, all roads lead to Manual. Like quite literally, I think it's always been a place. And if you look at it from its history, all the way back to the 1890s, it's been a place that's tried to do different than the rest of the city. And right now, Manual's in a spot as a central hub in our city, trying to look at what we see going on around. That's southwest, that's northeast, that's the whole city, and say we can do different here than the city's doing for our kids out there. And I know there are families and there are students who want to partner in that, and I think it's a place to, what Bay was saying, where it's not just like a quick, what do you think about what we're doing? It's how do we do better for your kids and with your kids? And I think that's the most important part about what we're trying to do right now. Outside of the programs, outside of the policy, outside of the outcomes, it's what we're doing inside to cultivate a community that's trying to do different than the rest of our city.
Thank you so much. Snap that out. I got to tell you, tonight's discussion, some folks may tune in and be shocked that we weren't talking about DPS policy. We weren't talking about deficits within Denver Public Schools and the lack of funding and all of the other stuff that normally when you have discussions about school and we have school leaders, that's where we go. But here with this community and this discussion, we wanted this discussion to be about the whole. We wanted this discussion to be about how we empower our schools. All of the other policy stuff, as you all spoke, will take care of itself. We got folks, fighting over that, warring over that, and actually trying to make some change over that stuff. But tonight, we wanted to make sure the audience heard the voices of folks who are touching our youth and touching our children every day, touching their hearts and their minds, and see in these leaders inspiration as to what the future holds for our communities. And so I want to thank each of you. I married an educator, and we're married for 20 years, and I know the power of educators in the lives of so many generations of people. And I want to thank each and every one of you for all that you do. I see that work in the faces of families and the communities that I serve, and I'm so grateful to be in this community, in these communities, with each of you. And Brother Pope, thank you so much for always creating a space and a place for us to have what I believe are real dialogues on things that families around the table are talking about. And so with that, this is how we do it, and we're going to end with my closing music, DJ. Come on! This is how we do it. Yes! Come on, DJ. Thank you all for watching Barbershop Talks. Have a good night.